If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world. But then it started getting cooler. So now they could just call it climate change because that way they can't miss. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion.
After calling climate change the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world during his UN speech, which is embarrassing enough on its own, Trump's energy department might be adding climate change to a new list of words to avoid. Now, denying this claim is one thing. This is something Republicans have done for years, although some have started to walk it back. But would it surprise you, Cenk, if they completely banned the term climate change and other terms in that scientific field in Department of Energy documents? Would that surprise you, Cenk?
Well, it would make sense because they ran on freedom of speech. And if you run on freedom of speech, you're gonna wanna ban a lot of words and say no one's allowed to say these words. That way they could have, well, okay, they can't have freedom of speech, but okay. But look, one of the things I want to discuss in this story is Donald Trump jealous because he wanted to run the biggest con in the world? In fact, I'm going to tell you about some of his cons. As long as we're talking about con jobs, Trump is quite the master at it.
Well, according to an email sent to the Energy Department's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, words such as climate change, green, and decarbonization are forbidden words, which is kind of a big deal when you look at that department. The words on the DOE list are at the heart of EERE's mission. It is the government's largest investor in technologies that help reduce heat trapping emissions that cause climate change, as well as the hazardous pollution from fossil fuels. Now, these aren't the only words and phrases banned, however. EERE forbid officials from using emissions to avoid the implication that they are a negative. Other terms officials must ditch include energy transition, sustainability or sustainable, clean or dirty energy, carbon CO2 footprint, and tax breaks, tax credits, and subsidies. Per the email, these forbidden words cannot be used in requests for federal funding opportunities, reports, or briefings. Please ensure that every member of your team is aware that this is the latest list of words to avoid, and continue to be conscientious about avoiding any terminology that you know to be misaligned with the administration's perspectives and priorities. The directive from Acting Director of External Affairs, Rachel Overby, said. Now, this isn't surprising. Trump has been denying and downplaying climate change for years. And Bernie Sanders made our job a little easier with this mashup he released last year. Take a look.
The seas will rise over the next 400 years, 1/8 of an inch, which means basically you have a little more beachfront property, okay?
All of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
He said the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese.
I'm not a big believer in man-made climate change.
Climate change is a hoax.
Thank you, everybody. I think something's happening, something's changing, and it'll change back again. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Hey, well, I don't think science knows, actually.
97% of climate scientists agree that humans are largely responsible for global warming.
I don't know that it's man-made. We'll have a little bit more beachfront property. That's not the worst thing in the world. You'd have to show me the scientists because they have a very big political agenda. I can also give you reports where people very much dispute that. You do have scientists that very much dispute it. It'll start getting cooler. Nobody really knows.
And as you saw, that clip of him from the UN, he's still denying it as of a week ago. But it's not just Trump. Energy Secretary Chris Wright has also sought to impugn climate science by touting a report he commissioned that downplayed the role rising emissions have had in worsening weather extremes. He has endorsed some of the report's most controversial findings, such as claiming the potential benefits of a warmer planet are undervalued. Last week, Wright canceled $13 billion of funding for renewable energy projects and took shots at wind and solar incentives that the Republican mega law will quickly sunset after more than 3 decades of existence. If you can't rock on your own after 33 years, maybe that's not a business that's going places, Wright said at a Wednesday press conference. After Politico's report of the email, DOE spokesperson Ben Dietrich denied the publication's findings, telling Politico none of those words are banned. We'll look into the validity of the email and, if necessary, take steps to correct any emails perceived as official direction. But Cenk, do you buy that?
Yeah. So my favorite part of that clip was, I don't think science knows actually. Okay, guys, like I know for some of the Trump voters, I know the answer, but it's still shocking. So you're gonna take Trump's word over it, over 99% of the scientists in the world. And then he says, the scientists actually have a political agenda. So the politician doesn't have a political agenda, but scientists have a political agenda? So can you find a scientist with a political agenda? Yeah, the 1% that are bought by the oil companies and they say, oh no, there is no such thing as climate change. Give me the money, right? And sometimes they get paid for junkets, etc. When we find those out, we share them with you guys. But overall, scientists don't make a ton of money. And do you know what a scientist does? Like the literal job of a scientist is to find out things that are true. The job of a politician is to BS you. Okay, and now why would a politician potentially have an agenda? They say, oh, well, the scientists, I mean, they might get a grant and then make maybe even $75,000 a year, those super rich scientists or something. But the politicians get hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign donations from who? Big oil. So they canceled the renewable projects. What they didn't tell you is, on top of the $35 billion in oil subsidies that they get every year, Trump added another $18 billion in subsidies for companies that have been getting it for literally over 100 years, are the most profitable companies in the world, but we had to be robbed in order to pay them more subsidies. It's not like they're struggling. They're at the very, very top, record profits, but they still had to come and rob you to pay for them. And why does that politician have the agenda? Because he got bribed by them through campaign contributions. That's why not only does he rig the laws in their favor and then try to destroy their competitors, renewable energy. Oh, why are they against climate change? Number one, big oil creates climate change and doesn't want to pay the cost of it. Every time there's severe damage from a storm, they say, well, the American people should pay, FEMA should pay, you should pay, not ExxonMobil. Well, you created the cost, who cares, I don't want to pay it. Make the American people pay. And Trump goes, oh yeah. And by the way, it's not just Trump. Our politicians on both sides have been kissing the ass of this industry because they've all been bribed by them. So then he goes, con job. Are you kidding me? You are the con job. So first of all these politicians are con men. They all work for their donors. They all rob us blind. They don't care about what the scientists say. You think the scientists are con men, but this legendary con man isn't? That's the one you trust? Okay, so real quick, let me tell you about Trump charity, Trump Foundation, okay? So there was Trump University, that was a scam, not a university. And he had to pay $25 million in fines. He had to admit that he ran a fake university, Jesus Christ. And then he ran a fake charity. And they were supposed to give money to cancer and cops or religious organizations. Instead, they would use the money to pay Trump's legal bills. And he bought not one, but 2 portraits of himself. One was a 6-foot-tall portrait. He's like, ooh, that looks really good. Let's get money out of the Trump charity. They're like, sir, we're supposed to give that money to kids with cancer. Shut up, that's a beautiful picture of me. Let's buy that one. But okay, then why don't you just pay for it? You're supposed to be a billionaire. Shut up, the people who gave money for cancer, let's use their money to buy a 6-foot portrait of myself. Look it up, look it up. He's a legendary con man and he's trying to con you on this.
So I'm really worried about this, if this is true, and it seems like we have no reason to believe that it isn't. But what we're seeing here, this language, the terms that they're zeroing in on, That's a massive walk back from where Republicans were just a couple years ago because of sustained pressure, because of just the undeniable science. I mean, Trump aside, the guy is a moron, we know that. He just talks out of his ass. But most Republicans at the very least acknowledged that climate change was real, but their solutions were very corporate friendly, like carbon capture. That's an industry friendly solution. But what we're seeing here is a walk back of like 4 or 5 decades old Republican talking points. Specifically, can we go up to graphic 2? There's a couple things here. Carbon CO2 footprint. That was invented by BP to shift the burden of responsibility away from corporations and onto the individual consumer, because they thought, hey, if we get people thinking that this is within their control and it's their individual choices that affect climate change, they won't have as much anger and they're toward us, and there won't be as much of a call for us to change course, because they knew deep down years before that emissions led to climate change, and they lied about it. They obscured the science and they tried to keep it hidden for years. And then once it became public, then all of a sudden it was, hey, using a paper straw, using a reusable water bottle, carpooling, that's gonna fix things. When in reality, it's the oil and gas companies that buy these politicians, and then because of sustained pressure, only recently on the Republican side did they start to say, well, carbon capture might be the way to go. But then also in that same list, clean or dirty energy. I'm wondering, Cenk, how does this apply to clean coal? Are we able to say clean coal anymore? Because that's another right-wing talking point that Trump likes to push. And we saw now this week, they want to invest a ton of money to bring coal back. And that is one of the filthiest forms of energy.
Yeah, look, guys, it's all bribery. That's all it is. And so it's the same in this story as the drug story we did earlier in the show, and the Israel story we did earlier in the show, and every story we do. They get bribed by different industries, and then they work like dogs for them and not you. So is there climate change? Of course. Does it create more severe storms? Yes. Does your family have to pay for it when your house is wiped out? Yes. Then the government has to, we all have to pay for you to rebuild your house, okay? And they get away with it scot-free when it's a cost. In capitalism, when your product has a cost, you're supposed to pay that cost. But they don't want to, they don't like capitalism, so they capture the government with con men like Donald Trump, and by the way, also Joe Biden. Right, so Joe Biden was better on climate change, but he was awful on defense contractors, Israel, and a million other issues, right? So they go and buy all of our politicians, and they force us into this dystopian world where we live under corporate rule. Last thing in regards to climate change here, so they're banning the phrase. Is it going to make it go away? Do you think that that's how you're going to win the argument? Just by banning a phrase? And how weak is that? You run on freedom of speech and then you go, oh, no, don't let anyone in the government say climate change. If people find out, no, the oil companies paid us so that we pretend it's not real, okay? Drill, baby, drill, drill, baby. Every time you see them say drill, baby, drill, you think it's because they want to get you lower gas prices? No, when they drill, that we don't get the oil. The companies, the corporations get the oil, and then they sell it all across the world. They don't have to sell to us. They take our natural resources, hand it over to those corporations, and then give them a fat subsidy on top. Those corporations make a killing, create climate change. Our houses get wiped out, and they say you pay for it. And that's how the con of American politics works, because the Supreme Court legalized bribery, and it's been an epic disaster ever since. We do not control our country anymore. The donor class, foreign governments, but mainly corporations control this country. That was a funny Freudian slip. This company slash country completely, and that's why they got their puppet Donald Trump to go, it's a con job, drill baby drill. Here, take your money, get Kansas. You live in Kansas, you live in Kentucky, you live in the hollers of West Virginia. Give me your money. I got to give it to subsidies to Exxon Mobil and the richest executives in the world. Give me your money, go to work again. So you give it to BP or Chevron and whoever else wants the money. And I'm sick of the robbery. I'm absolutely sick of the robbery, let alone the climate change that it's causing. Oh, I said it. Oh no.